Here is the complete Part 1 story, written as a cinematic, emotional YouTube narration with a daytime setting and the requested engagement moments. Writing. The CEO in a wheelchair blew out her candles alone, then a single dad walked in with a teddy bear. The last candle flickered once before disappearing into the quiet morning air. On the 42nd floor of a glass tower overlooking a busy city, a woman who had once commanded thousands of employees sat completely alone in a wheelchair, staring at a birthday cake that no one had bothered to share with her. Her name was Elara Voss, a 40-year-old CEO whose company was worth hundreds of millions, yet at that moment, she felt poorer than anyone in the city below. She had everything money could buy, except the one thing she wanted most, someone who would stay when she no longer had the power to give them anything. Elara slowly leaned forward and blew out the final candle. The small flame vanished, leaving a thin curl of smoke rising into the bright daylight streaming through the enormous windows. Outside, the city moved as it always did. Cars traveled along crowded streets, people hurried toward offices, and sunlight reflected from the skyscrapers. Nobody knew that behind one of those windows, a woman who had built an empire was spending her birthday alone. Then, just as Elara lowered her eyes toward the untouched cake, the elevator doors opened. A single father stepped into the room holding a slightly worn brown teddy bear. He was not supposed to be there. And the moment Elara saw what was attached to the bear's paw, her entire world began to change. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one small act can change someone's life, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Little Kindness Tales. Your support helps these stories reach more people who believe that compassion still matters. Elara Voss had spent most of her life believing that strength meant never needing anyone. She had grown a small technology company into one of the most respected businesses in the country through discipline, determination, and an almost frightening ability to keep moving forward. Her employees admired her intelligence, investors trusted her decisions, and competitors feared her confidence. But 3 years earlier, everything had changed in a single afternoon when a serious road accident left her with a permanent spinal injury and a wheelchair. The doctors had warned her that recovery would be difficult, and while she had fought through months of rehabilitation, she never regained the ability to walk. At first, everyone had surrounded her. Business partners sent flowers. Employees visited her hospital room. Magazines published stories about the powerful CEO who was learning to lead from a wheelchair. People called her brave. They called her inspiring. They called her a survivor. But Elara soon discovered that people loved inspirational stories more than they loved difficult realities. As months passed, visitors became fewer. Business associates returned to their schedules. Friends who had once filled her calendar with invitations suddenly became too busy. Even members of her own family began avoiding her because they did not know how to speak to the woman she had become. Elara responded the only way she knew how. She worked harder. She returned to the office before anyone expected her to. She redesigned the company headquarters so she could move independently. She refused special treatment. She rejected pity. Every morning, she arrived at the tower in a wheelchair and spent hours making decisions that affected thousands of people. Her employees saw a determined CEO. They did not see the woman who sometimes stayed after everyone had left, staring through the windows at families walking together on the streets below. Her 42nd birthday arrived on a clear weekday morning. Elara told everyone she did not want a celebration. She said she had meetings all day and preferred to keep things simple. In truth, she had secretly hoped someone would ignore her instructions. She had hoped someone might bring flowers, or perhaps a small cake, or simply sit beside her for 10 minutes without wanting anything in return. By noon, nothing happened. By 2 o'clock, her assistant had sent a brief birthday message. By 4, the office had become quiet. At 5:30, Elara looked at the small cake sitting on the table beside her. She had ordered it herself that morning through the building's catering service. There were no decorations except a simple white frosting message that read, "Happy birthday, Ilara." She stared at those words for a long time. Then she laughed softly, though there was no happiness in it. She wheeled herself toward the window and looked down at the city. For a woman who had spent years being surrounded by people, loneliness had become something she could not escape. She could buy another company. She could sign another contract. She could build another tower. But she could not purchase genuine affection. At 6 o'clock, she returned to the table. She lit the candles. One by one, the tiny flames appeared. Ilara closed her eyes and made a wish she would never tell anyone. Then she blew them out. That was when the elevator doors opened. A man named Ronan Vale stepped into the office carrying a brown teddy bear under one arm. Ronan was 36 years old, a single father who worked as a maintenance technician in the same building. His clothes were clean but modest, his dark hair slightly untidy from a long day of work, and his face carried the tired expression of someone who had spent years putting another person's needs before his own. Ilara stared at him. Ronan stopped. For several seconds, neither moved. He looked at the extinguished candles. Then he looked at Ilara. Then he looked down at the teddy bear. The situation was so unexpected that Ilara almost smiled. Ronan had not come to celebrate her birthday. At least, not originally. Earlier that afternoon, his 8-year-old daughter, Mireia, had been waiting for him at home. Ronan had promised her that he would be back before dinner, but an emergency repair in the building had delayed him. Mireia had recently discovered that the CEO on the top floor was spending her birthday alone. She had learned this from a security guard who had mentioned seeing the cake being delivered. The little girl had taken her favorite teddy bear from her bedroom and placed a handwritten note around its paw. She had told her father that everyone deserved a birthday surprise. Ronan had tried to explain that the CEO probably had people who cared about her. Mireia had looked at him with the seriousness only a child could have. She had reminded him that sometimes people who look strong are the ones who need kindness the most. So Ronan had taken the elevator to the 42nd floor. Now he stood before Ilara, unsure whether he had made a terrible mistake. Ilara's eyes moved toward the teddy bear. There was a small piece of paper tied to its paw. She asked Ronan to bring it closer. He hesitated, then walked toward her and handed it over. Ilara unfolded the note. The handwriting was large and uneven. It said that she did not know the CEO personally, but she hoped the teddy bear could keep her company so her birthday would not feel lonely. The note also said that if nobody had told her that day, she should know that her life mattered. Ilara read it once. Then again. Her fingers tightened around the paper. She had received millions of dollars worth of gifts in her lifetime. She had been given expensive watches, luxury cars, diamond jewelry, and private vacations. Yet a child's handwritten note nearly broke through every wall she had built around herself. For the first time in years, Ilara began to cry. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a few tears slipping down her face as she tried to look away. Ronan immediately became uncomfortable. He apologized and said he should probably leave. But Ilara stopped him. She asked him to stay. That simple request changed something neither of them understood at the time. Ronan pulled a chair closer and sat several feet away. He did not ask about her accident. He did not mention her wheelchair. He did not tell her she was brave. He simply sat there. The conversation continued for nearly an hour. Ilara learned that Ronan had become a single father after his wife passed away several years earlier. He worked long hours, repaired broken elevators, fixed electrical problems, and took extra shifts whenever bills became difficult. He lived in a small apartment across town with Mireia, where they shared one old sofa and a kitchen table covered with schoolbooks. Ronan learned something about Ilara too. Despite her wealth, she had never truly recovered from losing the life she once knew. She was afraid that people only stayed near her because of her position. She was afraid that if she stopped being powerful, there would be nothing left for anyone to love. Ronan did not try to convince her otherwise. He simply told her that his daughter had never heard of her company. She did not care how much money Alara had. She cared that Alara was alone. Those words stayed with Alara long after Ronan left. The next morning, something unusual happened. Alara arrived at work and discovered that the teddy bear was still sitting beside her desk. She had expected Ronan to return for it. He did not. Instead, a small note appeared on her desk. It said that Mireya had decided Alara could keep the teddy bear for 1 week, provided she promised to return it with a story. Alara smiled. For the first time in a very long time, she looked forward to something that had nothing to do with business. Over the next few weeks, an unexpected friendship began. Ronan occasionally stopped by during his maintenance rounds. Sometimes he brought a drawing from Mireya. Sometimes he brought nothing at all. Alara began asking about the girls' school, her favorite books, and the dreams she had for the future. Eventually, Alara invited them both to lunch. It was supposed to be a simple meal. Instead, it became the beginning of something much larger. Alara discovered that Mireya's school was struggling with accessibility problems. The building had narrow entrances, broken ramps, and classrooms that were difficult for students with mobility challenges to reach. Ronan had spent months trying to get the administration to make improvements, but the project had been delayed because of funding. Alara knew exactly what it felt like to be told that the world was not designed for you. Without telling Ronan, she contacted the school. Within weeks, the necessary improvements were funded. When Ronan discovered what she had done, he became uncomfortable. He told Alara that he had not brought the teddy bear because he wanted money. Alara understood. She told him that she had not helped because she wanted gratitude. She had helped because someone had once given her a small gift when she felt forgotten. And now she finally understood what the gift had meant. It was not the teddy bear. It was the reminder that she was still part of the human world. Months passed. Alara began changing the culture inside her company. She introduced accessibility programs, flexible work opportunities, and support systems for employees facing unexpected hardships. She stopped measuring people only by productivity. She began asking questions she had never thought to ask before. How are you really doing? What do you need? Who is helping you? And sometimes, who do you need to help? Ronan remained part of her life, not as an employee or a charity case, but as a friend who had walked into an empty room carrying a child's teddy bear. 1 year after that lonely birthday, Alara's office looked completely different. There were balloons. There were flowers. There were employees laughing. There were children running through the hallways. And at the center of it all sat Alara, smiling in her wheelchair. On the table was the same brown teddy bear. The fur was slightly worn now, and the original note had been carefully preserved in a glass frame. Ronan stood nearby with Mireya, who had grown taller and more confident. This time, Alara did not blow out the candles alone. She closed her eyes and made another wish. But she did not wish for her old life back. She did not wish to walk again. She did not wish for more money or greater success. She wished for the courage to keep opening doors for people who felt forgotten. Then she opened her eyes. Around her were people who had chosen to stay. And Alara finally understood something that no business school, no executive coach, and no fortune could ever have taught her. Sometimes, the greatest turning points in our lives do not arrive in expensive cars or important meetings. Sometimes they arrive in an elevator. Sometimes they come from the smallest apartment in the city. Sometimes they are carried by a tired single father who almost decided not to knock. And sometimes, the person who changes your life is a child who simply believes that nobody should have to celebrate their birthday alone. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, leave a heartfelt comment, and subscribe to Little Kindness Tales. Your engagement may seem small, but just like Mireya's teddy bear, one small act can carry a message of hope farther than you ever imagine. And before we reach the end, I have one special request for you. In the comments, write the words, "Kindness always finds a way," if you believe that even the smallest act of compassion can change someone's life. Because somewhere in the world today, there may be an Alara sitting alone, believing that nobody remembers her. There may be a Ronan wondering whether his small gesture will matter. And there may be a Mireya quietly reminding the adults around her that kindness does not have to be expensive to be powerful. Alara's birthday had begun with an empty room, a silent cake, and candles that disappeared into the daylight. But it ended with something far more valuable than a celebration. It ended with connection. It ended with friendship. It ended with a second chance. And every year after that, whenever Alara looked at the old brown teddy bear sitting proudly beside her office window, she remembered the day she had blown out her candles alone. She remembered the elevator doors opening. She remembered the little handwritten note. And she remembered the most important lesson of her life. You never truly know how much a small kindness means to someone. So if you have the chance to make someone feel seen, do it. If you have the chance to make someone feel remembered, do it. And if you ever find yourself carrying a little kindness into a lonely room, do not underestimate its power. Because sometimes, all it takes to change a life is one person who decides to walk through the door.